Are you interested in buying businesses? Do you know anything about the due diligence review process? If you want to learn about it, keep watching. That's what we're going to talk about today in part 5 of my 6-part series on buying and selling small businesses. So I'm still on vacation at the lake. I wasn't able to finish this series last night, but I changed into a new vacation shirt, and all of a sudden it's sunny. Surprise! I'm still drinking whiskey. I am on vacation. George Dickel 12 if you're keeping score. But let's get into the due diligence review process and kind of just talk about what that is. So again, this is part of a 6-part series. If you're just joining us, you want to go back and watch the parts before where we talk about the LOI and the negotiation strategy, which then goes to the long form asset purchase agreement. And then you have the due diligence review period, which is what we're going to talk about right now. So what is due diligence in a nutshell? It is just legal speak for saying trust but verify. So it's basically all of the things that the parties told each other, especially things that the seller told the buyer during the course of the negotiations. The buyer now gets to see, are all those things true? I've signed agreement, so if all these things are true, then I'm bound to the agreement and I have to pay you. But now you, the seller, must prove that all the things that you've said are true. And so that's what the due diligence is all about. Now the exact parameters of the due diligence are going to be laid out in the asset purchase agreement, and some things are going to be off limits. And so, if you want to make sure, for example, you're the seller, you want to make sure that your personal finances are not eligible for due diligence review, but only the business is. So that's one common objection that sellers have. But otherwise, if it's a part of the business, generally it's going to be fair game for a due diligence review. Really, the big areas you're talking about are going to be financial and operational. Those are the two biggest broad areas. So in the financial space, you want to know, how's the business doing right now? What's the cash flow look like? What do the profit and loss statements look like? And what's the balance sheet of the business? And then the second thing I look for are, what's the year-over-year sales numbers? So what are the trends over the last few years, the big trends? And then short-term, what are the trends as well, in terms of like the last few weeks and months. Now, you should already know this information because you should have asked for it and got it, when you had your LOI and you were going back and forth. But there may be some things that they don't give you, and they're not willing to give you. So you may be getting those for the first time during your due diligence review. But that's the financial part of it. The other big part is the operational part, so things that are specific to your business. Other things in terms of operational issues that you're going to want to look at, do you need to have any land inspections? What about the equipment? What about the HVAC in the building? If you're going to be taking over the lease and you're responsible for that, you're going to want to know, is it functional? Is it operational? Is this an expense that you're going to have to take care of? So it's really important that you know your industry and you know what are the things that must be true and the assumptions that you're making, and you just want to challenge and test all of your assumptions. So I put together this nifty list of items that I always ask for in asset purchase agreement due diligence reviews, if these are applicable. And that list is right here. And those things are bank records for the last 2 years, tax returns for the last 2 years, point of sale records. So whether they use Square or a native point of sale or some other point of sale, inventory purchasing records from whoever they purchased their inventory from. Payroll records, their lease agreements, which obviously you're going to need if you're taking them over, contracts. So any contract that you're assuming that you have to, take over your predecessor's rights and responsibilities under, you're going to want to see that. But you're not usually assuming contracts. That's like sort of a special kind of deal. But if you are, obviously you're going to want to read all the contracts that are applicable to you. Intellectual property and proof of your intellectual property. Is it registered? What's the registration number if so? Can I search that registration number on the USPTO and it'll say that you actually own it? this is what due diligence is all about. It's just researching. Operations manuals are another huge thing. This is great to get before you make your offer, because a business that doesn't have any operations manuals is worth a lot less than one that's already thought through having operation manuals. But if you haven't seen them, definitely see them during the due diligence review period. And then I mentioned the HVAC, but also anything that's industry specific. And if you're getting land, environmental reviews all day long, and I'm sure there are so many things that I'm not even mentioning for industries that I don't deal with all the time. So you definitely need to have expertise in the industry that you're buying, and that makes sense, right? Probably shouldn't buy a business if you don't really know anything about the business. My favorite due diligence thing to do with restaurants is to physically go visit the restaurants during, what I expect to be the peak business based on the representations of the seller. So, go stand on the corner. If it's a late night business, go stand on the corner at 1 a.m. It doesn't have to be a corner. I suppose it can just be the sidewalk. But the point is, stand there during the time when it's supposed to be busy. Is there a lot of foot traffic? Is it really as busy as the numbers would have you believe? Just make sure that reality matches what you've been sold, which that's a bigger conversation overall. But when it comes to these deals, you definitely want to make sure that that's true. That's it for this discussion on the due diligence review period. Again, basically, it's just getting documents, checking them to make sure everything that you told and everything that you were told and everything that you assumed is true. And so once you do that, now you're ready to close. And in the next and final episode of this 6-part series, we will talk about issues related to closing and actually taking over the business. Have a good one. If you have any questions or anything else you'd like me to cover, leave it in the comments and I'd be happy to address it. See you next time.